Does God use faith?
Surely.
Now see, here's a sore spot. There are those who say...
Not with you.
No.
Not with God.
In fact, I'm not sore at God at all, and I don't think he's sore at me. I haven't done anything to him.
No, but the critics say God is God. He doesn't have to have faith. He doesn't exercise faith. He doesn't use faith. He's God. He's the object of faith.
Oh, wait a minute. What does that mean, object? I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
One day, this God had a cosmic brainstorm. He decided to use the force of his faith to create something superb and special. He decided to bring a whole new world into existence. And this was not just going to be any old world. This was going to be the most fantastic world imaginable. This world would become so wonderful that it would feature an exact duplicate of the mother planet on which God lived.
This is all a copy. It's a copy of home. It's a copy of the mother planet. Where God lives, he made a little one just like his and put us on it.
After carefully visualizing every single detail of his wonderful, wonderful world, God went into action. Releasing the force of his faith like a whirlwind, God spoke into existence the planet he saw in his mind's eye. And was God ever excited? Looking down with fondness on his classic new creation, he named it Planet Earth. And this was only the beginning. Suddenly, a host of brilliant new ideas began to flood God's creative consciousness. He began to visualize vast oceans and springs abounding with water. He saw magnificent mountains and fertile fields. His mind produced flashes of thunder and lightning. Plants, flowers, and trees blazed in rapid succession through his thoughts. God began to visualize life replete with beautiful birds and creatures of every single shape and size imaginable. Yet this was merely the beginning, for after 5 days of vivid visualizations, God's mind moved into yet another dimension. On day 6, in his mind's eye, God saw the crowning jewel of his creation. As the details coalesced in his mind, God suddenly found himself focused on an exact duplicate of himself.
John, come on up here. Come on, John Avanzini. 1 second. I want you to tell me what you hear the Spirit of God saying this morning. Tell me.
What the Spirit of God is saying?
What you hear the Spirit of God saying this morning.
That it's being declared in the earth today what the eternal purpose of God has been through the ages, and it's coming clearly now to God's people that he is duplicating himself in the earth.
Amen. 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 Oh, tell me.
So God spoke, and suddenly out of the pristine soil of planet Earth there arose another God. A God spelled with a small g, but a God nonetheless.
He doesn't even draw a distinction between himself and...
Never. You never can do that in a covenant relationship.
Do you know what else that has settled then tonight? This hue and cry and controversy that has been spawned by the devil to try and bring dissension within the body of Christ, that we're gods. I am a little God.
Yes.
I have his name. I'm one with him. I'm in covenant relation with him. I am a little God. Critics,
you are anything that he is.
Yes.
As the image of this little God took form, God saw that he had literally outdone himself. For there before his very eyes stood another God with a body just like his, including size and shape. God had finally done it. He had thought the unthinkable, and by his word of faith, he had created a creature that was not even subordinate to himself.
God's reason for creating Adam was his desire to reproduce himself. I mean, a reproduction of himself. And in the Garden of Eden, he did that. He was not a little like God. He was not almost like God. He was not subordinate to God even. And Adam was as much like God as you could get. Just the same as Jesus, when he came into the earth, he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He wasn't a lot like God. He's God manifested in the flesh. And I want you to know something. Adam in the Garden of Eden was God manifested in the flesh.
And was God ever glad? For now he had a colleague whose nature was identical to his own, a God who could think like him, be like him, and do almost, but not quite everything that he could do. God called his carbon copy Adam, and he gave Adam complete dominion and authority over his entire creation. This creature had so much power that his creator could do nothing in the earth realm without first obtaining his permission.
We'll return to our special presentation in just a moment.
God, the Father, cannot do anything in this earth realm without permission. Now again, I realize that statement is very, as I say, from an evangelical point of view, which is, when I say that, that just simply means taking in account the main major denominations that we're familiar with down through the years. That's the evangelical church world. That this statement that I'm making that God can't do is like me going out and committing adultery to them. It's sinful to say that.
Adam was truly a super being. He could fly like the birds and swim underwater like a fish. And that's not all. Without a spacesuit, Adam could literally fly through the universe. With a single thought, he could transport himself to the very moon itself.
Adam was a super being when God created him. I don't know whether people even know this, but he was the first superman that really ever lived. First of all, the scriptures declare clearly that he had dominion over the fowls of the air, the fish of the sea, which means he used to fly.
Whoa.
Well, of course. How can you have dominion over the birds and not be able to do what they do?
Whoa.
Actually,
wait a minute.
I'll prove it to you.
Wait a minute, Danny. I've never heard that.
The word dominion in the Hebrew clearly declares that if you have dominion over a subject, that you do everything that subject does. In other words, that subject, if it does something you cannot do, you don't have dominion over it. I'll prove it further. Adam not only flew, he flew to space. He used to be, he was, with one thought, he'd be on the moon.
Even after creating a super being like Adam, God was not yet quite satisfied. Somehow, God knew that there was still a piece of the puzzle that was missing. So God began brainstorming again. In a flash, it dawned on him. Adam was made in his image, so obviously he was as much female as he was male, right? So why not separate the male part from the female part? Not willing to waste a single moment, God charged into action. Causing a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, God opened him up. He removed the female part from the male part, and he made a being of surpassing beauty. He made woman, man with a womb, and he called the womb man Eve.
You know that God created Adam, and we won't go back over all that again. He created him in authority. He said, God said, and it was. God said, let there be light, and it was. And then he came up to create man and said, God said, let us create man in our image. Let him have dominion. Those were the words that he used to bring Adam alive. And then he created Eve out of Adam. Now, actually, God didn't name her Eve. Adam named her Eve later. That wasn't her name. Her name was Adam. Adam, when God said Adam, they both came. Their authority was one and the same together. They did everything together. They had always been together. Even when she was still part of him, he was as much female as he was male, like God is, and God separated the female part of him and then put them back together, and she was Adam. They were Adam. He was the man, she was the woman. She was the man with the womb.
But this time, God had gone too far, for he had brought into existence the very beings who would one day get him thrown off the new planet he had created. As incredible as it may seem, these super beings would one day soon turn on their creator and relegate him to the status of the greatest failure of all time.
I was shocked when I found out who the biggest failure in the Bible actually is. You know, everybody asks you, say, who's the biggest failure? They say, Judas. Somebody else will say, no, I believe it's Adam. Well, how about the devil? He's the most consistent failure.
Okay.
But he's not the biggest in terms of material failure and so forth. The biggest one in the whole Bible is God.
Oh, what? Don't you turn that set off. You listen to what... I told you now, you sit still a minute.
You know me well enough to know I wouldn't tell something that I can't prove with the Bible.